That night, my husband demanded I apologize to my sister, said I'd been falsely accusing them. I agreed, but instead of an apology, I opened the bank envelope marked $50,000, money he claimed was for urgent debt payments, but was actually in the name of Tessa Vale, my sister. The living room fell dead silent. My mother gripped her chair while Grant's face drained of color as I laid down the power of attorney forms, bank statements, and safe deposit box receipts. They thought I'd bow my head. Instead, I brought the truth and a plan to turn their $50,000 lie into my new beginning. My name is Sloane Carter, and I should have seen the cracks forming in my marriage long before they split wide open. At 32, I'd built a decent freelance career designing content for Harborline Creative, working from our two-story colonial in Riverton's west side. Grant Holloway, my husband of 5 years, managed operations at Linden & Co., logistics downtown. We were the picture of Midwest stability, Sunday barbecues, hiking trails along the river, craft beer at local breweries, the American dream, or so I kept telling myself. My sister Tessa Vale lived 15 minutes away, working as a nurse at a private clinic near Riverton Medical Center. 2 years older. She'd always been the golden child, the one who knew exactly what wine paired with grilled salmon, who could make our mother laugh with inside jokes I'd never quite understood. Grant admired that about her. "Your sister just gets things," he'd say, scrolling through his phone while I cleared dinner plates. "She's practical." The boundaries started blurring so gradually, I barely noticed. Text messages at 10:30 p.m. asking Grant for guy advice about her dating life. Then came the spare key. "Just in case I need to check on Murphy when you're both at work." Murphy was our golden retriever who spent most days sleeping on his bed, hardly requiring emergency supervision. I remember the exact moment something shifted in my chest from unease to suspicion. We'd planned dinner at Romano's for our 5th anniversary, 7 p.m., reservation, booth in the back like our first date. At 6:45, Grant's phone buzzed. "Tessa. Emergency at the clinic. Need moral support." He looked at me with those green eyes that once made me melt. Raincheck family comes first. Family comes first. That phrase would echo in my head for weeks. I started keeping a notebook. Nothing dramatic, just timestamps and observations. Grant's Tuesday meetings with logistics partners that consistently aligned with Tessa's shift endings. The Saturday morning runs that stretched from 1 hour to 3, the way they'd stop talking when I entered a room, resuming conversation about something transparently mundane, weather, traffic, Murphy's vet appointments. 3 weeks into my documentation, Grant's jacket fell from the kitchen chair, spilling his wallet and keys. A small brass key tumbled out, not our house, not his office. The fob read R.M. Unit 447, Riverton Mutual. I recognized their safe deposit box keys from settling my grandmother's estate. I photographed it before sliding everything back into his pocket. That evening, I watched him pour wine while Tessa sat at our kitchen island, her scrubs still on from a brutal 12-hour shift. She laughed at something on his phone screen, her hand briefly touching his wrist. Such a small gesture. So practiced. "What's funny?" I asked, chopping vegetables with unnecessary force. "Just a meme about hospital administration," Tessa said smoothly. "You wouldn't get it." "You wouldn't get it?" Another phrase that would replay endlessly. I began building a spreadsheet, cross-referencing credit card statements with both their schedules. $4,800 in cash withdrawals every month, always in 3 installments. "Client entertainment," Grant explained when I asked about one. "Cash-only places. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. Linden & Co. issued corporate cards specifically for client expenses. The Riverton Mutual envelope appeared one Thursday when I was organizing tax documents, tucked between old warranties and insurance papers. A receipt for $50,000 transferred to R.M. Safe Services 3 months prior. The date matched a weekend Grant claimed to be at a logistics conference in Chicago. The weekend, Tessa posted Instagram photos from a much-needed spa retreat with no location tags. My husband had told me the $50,000 covered urgent tax debt from a previous filing error. IRS doesn't mess around, he'd said, kissing my forehead. Better safe than sorry. I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? We'd built 5 years on trust, on shared dreams of kids and kitchen renovations and European vacations when we retired. I made an appointment at Riverton Mutual for the following Monday, claiming to need information about adding a signatory to our accounts. The branch manager, a kind woman named Patricia, pulled up our records. There it was on the screen. Safe Deposit Box 447, primary holder Grant Holloway. Authorized secondary Tessa Vale. When was the secondary added? I asked casually, pretending to check my phone. 3 months ago. Both parties were present for the authorization. Both parties, present, together. I sat in my car afterward, engine running, heat blasting against the November cold. My phone buzzed, Grant asking what I wanted for dinner, suggesting we invite Tessa since she'd had a rough week at work. I texted back, perfect. I'll make her favorite. The performance of normalcy became my new full-time job. Smile at dinner, laugh at Tessa's stories, kiss Grant goodnight, all while gathering evidence like a detective working her first murder case. Email receipts from Maplewood Suites for a 3-month deposit. Calendar invites Tessa accidentally shared with our mother showing appointments during Grant's business trips. Bank logs showing them both entering Riverton Mutual at 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday when Grant was supposedly in back-to-back meetings. The safe deposit key disappeared from Grant's wallet 2 weeks before everything exploded. He'd hidden it somewhere else, somewhere he thought I'd never look. He underestimated me. They both did. They thought I was the quiet one, the accommodating one, the one who'd always step aside to keep the peace. They were about to learn that silence isn't submission. Sometimes it's strategy. The ultimatum came on a Wednesday night in late November. Grant had been distant all week, barely touching his dinner, scrolling through his phone with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. The dishwasher hummed in the background. The wall clock ticked toward 9:30 p.m. Murphy lay stretched across the living room rug, oblivious to the tension coiling through our house like smoke. "We need to talk," Grant said, setting his phone face down on the coffee table. The gesture felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced this moment in the bathroom mirror. I closed my laptop, pushing aside the Harbor Line creative project I'd been reviewing. Okay. He sat forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped in that way men do when they're about to deliver what they think is wisdom. Your behavior toward Tessa has become unacceptable. The words hung between us. I waited. Silence. I'd learned. Makes people fill space with truth they hadn't meant to reveal. She's your sister, Sloane, family, and you've been treating her like some kind of... He paused, searching for words. Threat, the cold shoulders, the paranoid questions, the way you watch her when she's here. She's noticed. Your parents have noticed. What specifically have I done? I asked, voice neutral as water. Grant's jaw tightened. Don't play dumb. The accusations, the jealousy. Last week you practically interrogated her about her work schedule. I asked if she was enjoying her new shifts. With that tone. What tone? He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, November wind rattled the bare oak branches. This is exactly what I mean. This defensive, suspicious attitude. It's toxic, Sloane. It's destroying our family dynamics. Our family dynamics. As if Tessa had become a third member of our marriage. What do you want me to do? I asked. He turned, backlit by the street lamp, face shadowed. Apologize to her, genuinely. Take responsibility for your behavior and commit to changing it. And if I don't? The pause stretched 3 heartbeats too long. Then I'll file for divorce. I won't live in a marriage poisoned by baseless jealousy. Baseless. The word almost made me laugh. $50,000 sitting in a safe deposit box with her name on it, and he called my concerns baseless. I need to think about it, I said. There's nothing to think about. Either you apologize by this weekend, or I start making calls to lawyers Monday morning. I studied his face. This man I'd loved for 7 years, married for 5. The slight tremor in his left eye that appeared when he was lying. The way he kept touching his wedding ring, rotating it like a combination lock. "Can we do it properly?" I asked. "With my parents there, if I'm going to apologize for damaging family relationships, shouldn't the whole family witness the reconciliation?" Relief flooded his features so fast I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That's perfect. Yes, your parents' house, Sunday dinner. We can move forward properly." He reached for me then, pulling me into an embrace that smelled of cologne and deception. "I knew you'd see reason. Tessa means so much to your mom." "This has been killing her." Over his shoulder, my laptop screen glowed with the half-finished project. I thought about my clients, my work, the career I'd built while he and Tessa built their secret. "Should we call her, let her know?" "I'll handle it," Grant said quickly. Too quickly. "You focus on what you want to say." That night, he fell asleep within minutes, snoring softly while I lay rigid beside him. At 2:15 a.m., I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs. My phone had one new message from Noah Briggs, my friend who worked at First National Bank downtown. "Coffee tomorrow. That thing you asked about, I have info." I'd reached out to Noah the day after Grant's ultimatum announcement, asking about banking regulations regarding spouse access to joint account records. His response was everything I'd hoped for as a legal spouse. I had rights to all transaction histories, including those Grant thought he'd hidden. Thursday morning, Grant left for work whistling. Actually whistling, like a villain in a bad movie. I met Noah at the Grindhouse Cafe on Market Street, a place Grant never went because they didn't have oat milk. "You were right to dig," Noah said, sliding a folder across the table. "The patterns are textbook. Regular cash withdrawals just under reporting limits, transfers to third-party services, the safe deposit box in both names. If this were my account review, I'd flag it for potential asset concealment." "Is it legal?" "What they're doing?" Noah shrugged. "Legal isn't the same as ethical. And in a divorce, hiding marital assets is definitely not legal." That afternoon, I made my final preparations. Screenshots uploaded to 3 different cloud services. Physical copies in a safety deposit box at First National. My own box, my own secret. A consultation scheduled with Vera Sinclair at Sinclair and Dune for Monday morning. Just in case. Grant came home that evening with flowers. Roses, which I'm allergic to, but the gesture mattered more than the botany. "Tessa's excited about Sunday," he said, kissing my cheek. "She wants to bring dessert, that chocolate tart you used to love." Used to love. Before I knew it came with a side of betrayal. "Tell her that sounds wonderful," I said, arranging the roses in a vase I'd relegate to the garage later. Friday passed in a blur of pretense. Saturday, Grant suggested we spend the day together. Reconnecting. We walked Murphy through Riverside Park, held hands like strangers attempting intimacy, ate lunch at the place we'd had our 3rd date. He kept checking his phone, texting with a frown. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just Tessa. Nervous about tomorrow." "Tell her not to be. I'm going to make things right." He squeezed my hand. I knew the woman I married was still in there. The woman he married would have apologized. The woman I'd become was about to teach them both what family really meant. The red thread leading to $50,000 started with our joint checking account. Saturday morning, while Grant showered, I logged into our online banking with the credentials I'd always had but rarely used. He managed our finances, another red flag I'd ignored in the name of trust. The transaction history told a story Grant never wanted me to read. 3 months ago, October 15th, a wire transfer $50,000 to R.M. Safe Services. The memo line read, "Tax Settlement 2019-2021," but our CPA had filed those returns correctly. I had the documents to prove it. No amendments, no penalties, no outstanding balances with the IRS. I screenshotted everything, then searched further back. The $4,800 monthly cash withdrawals started 5 months ago, always split into 3 transactions, $1,600 on the first Tuesday, $1,600 on the third Tuesday, $1,600 on the last Friday. The ATM locations varied but stayed within a 3-mile radius of Tessa's clinic. My phone buzzed, Grant calling from upstairs. "Where are you?" "Making coffee." I called back, closing the laptop. "Want some, please? And can you grab my navy blazer from the dry cleaner for tomorrow?" Tomorrow. The grand apology. The performance they were all waiting for. I drove to the dry cleaner, then made an unscheduled stop at Riverton Mutual. The same branch manager, Patricia, greeted me with professional warmth. "Mrs. Holloway, how can I help you today? I need to verify some information about our safe deposit box, for tax purposes." She pulled up the account. "Box 447 opened October 15th. Would you like to access it?" "Actually, I just need the access log. Our accountant needs to verify dates for documentation." Patricia hesitated. "Typically, both key holders need to approve log releases." "I understand," I said, pulling out my phone. "I have Grant's written authorization right here." I showed her the email I'd forged that morning, using Grant's typical sign-off and the tone he used for business correspondence. She studied it, then nodded. "I'll print the last 6 months of access records." The log was damning. Grant and Tessa. Together. October 15th at 2:45 p.m. Grant alone. October 20th. Tessa alone. November 2nd. November 9th. November 16th. My sister had accessed our marital assets more times than I'd accessed my own jewelry box. Next stop, Maplewood Suites, a furnished apartment complex on Riverton's south side. I'd tracked down the property through credit card statements, a business lunch charge at their lobby cafe. No logistics company held lunch meetings at residential properties. The leasing office was decorated for Thanksgiving, paper turkeys and artificial autumn leaves. A young woman named Brittany cheerfully greeted me. "I'm looking into a unit for my sister," I said, which wasn't entirely false. She mentioned she'd toured here recently. "Tessa Vale," Brittany typed into her computer. "Oh yes, Ms. Vale secured Unit 308 last month, 3-month lease with option to extend. She listed Mr. Holloway as emergency contact." My stomach turned to ice, but I smiled. How thoughtful of Grant to help her out. What was the deposit structure? First month plus security, $4,800 total. Paid in cash. Actually, we don't usually accept cash deposits, but Mr. Holloway vouched for her employment stability. $4,800. The exact amount of 1 month's cash withdrawals. I thanked Brittany and left with a brochure I'd never need. The iCloud revelation came by accident. I'd been organizing photos when I noticed Tessa's shared calendar still linked from when she'd helped plan our mother's 60th birthday. She'd forgotten to revoke access. Her private appointments aligned perfectly with Grant's client meetings. November 3rd. Personal day 2 to 5 p.m. matched Grant's logistics partner review 2 to 6 p.m. November 10th. Clinic admin half-day matched Grant's inventory assessment off-site. But the most damning evidence came from an email Grant had missed when clearing his trash folder. He'd forwarded a bank statement to an address that wasn't Tessa's usual one, T-Vale, private webmail. The subject line, safe as promised. I created a timeline, a beautiful spreadsheet color-coded by evidence type. Financial transactions in green, Tessa's appointments in blue, Grant's alibis in red. The overlaps created a purple pattern of deception so clear it could have been modern art. Noah had mentioned something during coffee that stuck. In financial crimes, it's not just about what they took, it's about conspiracy to defraud. Grant and Tessa hadn't just stolen $50,000. They'd conspired to hide marital assets, possibly preparing for Grant to file for divorce himself once everything was secured. I gathered every document into folders labeled A through F, exactly as planned. Each one told part of the story, but together they painted a masterpiece of betrayal. Folder A, the bank statements showing the transfer. Folder B, the safe deposit box records and access logs. Folder C, the Maplewood Suites lease and payment records. Folder D text messages I'd recovered from Grant's tablet, including one that said, "Locked away safe. Wait to tell S until after holidays." Folder E, the cash withdrawal patterns with notations. Folder F, parking garage photos I'd pulled from my dash cam, showing Tessa's Honda Civic in our complex's visitor spot at 11:45 p.m. on 3 occasions when she'd supposedly worked late. Saturday afternoon, I met my father for coffee at his favorite diner. Arthur Vale was a retired insurance investigator who'd taught me to see patterns where others saw coincidence. "Dad, did Tessa ever mention needing money for medical expenses?" He frowned, stirring his black coffee. "Medical, no. She has excellent insurance through the clinic. Why, just something she mentioned. Maybe I misunderstood." "Your sister's been odd lately," he said slowly. "Secretive. Your mother thinks she's seeing someone but won't admit it." If only he knew who that someone was. That evening, Grant was almost tender. He cooked dinner, opened a bottle of wine, suggested we watch a movie. "Tomorrow will be a fresh start," he kept saying, "for everyone." I smiled and nodded and mentally reviewed my evidence folders. Tomorrow would indeed be fresh, like a sharp wind that clears smoke from a burning building. They wanted an apology. They'd get a reckoning. Sunday arrived gray and cold, the kind of November day that makes you pull curtains tight and light candles against the gloom. I dressed carefully, black slacks, cream sweater, the pearl earrings my mother had given me for my wedding, armor disguised as Sunday best. Grant adjusted his tie 3 times in the mirror. "You ready for this?" "I've prepared what I need to say," I replied, sliding the manila envelope into my leather tote. 6 folders nestled inside, each one a piece of the truth they'd tried to bury under $50,000 of lies. The drive to my parents' house took 12 minutes. Grant filled the silence with rehearsed casualness, comments about the weather, the Packers game, anything but what we were driving toward. His phone buzzed constantly. Tessa, no doubt, needing reassurance that her performance would go as planned. My parents lived in a colonial on Maple Avenue, where Tessa and I had grown up trading secrets and sharing dreams. Now we'd trade something else entirely. Tessa's Honda was already parked in the driveway. Grant pulled in behind it, a symbolic formation I noted with bitter satisfaction. They'd been behind each other in so many ways these past months. My mother, Marilyn, answered the door wearing her hostess smile and a festive autumn scarf. "Oh, good, you're here. Come in. Come in. It's freezing." The living room had been arranged like a stage. 2 armchairs for my parents, the sofa for Grant and me, and a single chair positioned across from us for Tessa. She'd dressed the part of wounded sister, soft gray cashmere, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a way that made her look vulnerable. The chocolate tart she'd promised sat on the coffee table like a peace offering. Wine, my father offered, though it was barely 4 p.m. "Please," Grant said quickly. I shook my head. "I want to be clear-headed for this." Tessa's eyes darted to Grant, a micro-expression of concern. "Good." We settled into our assigned positions. My mother launched into her prepared opening, something about family bonds and misunderstandings, how we were all adults who could work through anything with love and communication. I let her finish, noting how Tessa nodded along, playing the gracious victim. "I appreciate everyone being here," I began, setting my tote bag beside my feet. "This has been weighing on me, and you're right. Mom, families should be able to work through anything with honest communication." Grant's hand found mine, squeezing in what he thought was support. I didn't pull away. Not yet. "Tessa," I continued, meeting my sister's eyes, "I owe you an apology." She straightened, a small smile beginning. "Sloan, please, let me finish." I stood, walking to the center of the room. "I'm sorry for staying silent so long, for letting this go on without saying anything. That was wrong of me." My parents exchanged pleased looks. Grant's posture relaxed. "But I'm not apologizing for being suspicious. Or jealous, as Grant calls it." I reached into my bag, pulling out the manila envelope. "Before I say anything else, I need to address something. The $50,000. The room shifted. Air suddenly thick. Grant's wineglass stopped halfway to his lips. What 50,000? My mother asked. The 50,000 Grant transferred from our joint account 3 months ago. He told me it was for urgent tax debt. I pulled out a paper. The IRS summary showing zero balance owed. But we don't have any tax debt. Sloan, this isn't the time. Grant started. When would be the time? After the divorce you threatened after you've hidden more money. I turned to my parents. Did you know Grant gave me an ultimatum? Apologize to Tessa or he files for divorce Monday morning. My father's expression hardened. Grant. It's not like that, Grant said. She's been paranoid, making accusations. Let me show you what I've been accusing them of. I opened the envelope, pulling out folders one by one, laying them on the coffee table like tarot cards revealing fate. Folder A, October 15th, wire transfer, $50,000 to R.M. Safe Services. That's Riverton Mutual's safe deposit box service. Tessa's face had gone pale. Sloan, you don't understand. Folder B, the safe deposit box rental agreement and access log. Box 447, Grant Holloway Primary. Tessa Vale, authorized secondary user. Opened the same day as the transfer. My mother's wineglass trembled. Tessa. Folder C, lease agreement for Maplewood Suites Unit 308. 3-month furnished apartment. Deposit $4,800 cash. Lessee Tessa Vale. Emergency contact and financial reference Grant Holloway. Each revelation landed like a physical blow. My father stood slowly, his investigator instincts awakening. Folder D. My voice stayed steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Text messages. Grant to someone saved as T saying, money locked away safe. Wait until after holidays to tell S. Would you like to explain what S was going to be told after the holidays? Grant had gone from red to white to a sickly gray. You went through our shared tablet, our joint bank accounts, all legal access for a spouse suspicious of financial infidelity. Folder E, cash withdrawals, $4,800 monthly for 5 months, always in 3 transactions, always from ATMs near Tessa's clinic. Tessa stood abruptly. This is insane. Mom, Dad, she's obviously having some kind of breakdown. Folder F. I pulled out the final evidence. Parking garage photos, your car, Tessa, in our visitor spot. 11:45 p.m. on 3 occasions when you told Mom you were working late shifts. The room fell silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. 5:23 p.m. The autumn light outside had faded to dusk, leaving us in the warm glow of table lamps that now felt like interrogation lights. My father spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of a man who'd investigated fraud for 30 years. Tessa, Grant, explain the money. They looked at each other, a silent conversation I finally understood. Who would lie first? Who would throw whom under the bus? It was temporary, Tessa said finally, her voice small. Just until what? My mother's voice had lost all warmth. Until you stole enough from your sister's marriage, until the divorce was final. Grant stood, reaching for me. Sloan, let's discuss this at home. I stepped back. There's nothing to discuss. You have 10 days to return the $50,000 plus interest, or I file both criminal charges for fraud and a civil suit for asset concealment. The chocolate tart sat untouched, its perfect surface unbroken, like the facade they'd maintained for so long. But facades, like tarts, eventually crack under pressure, and I was done being anything but pressure. The manila envelope felt light in my hands for something that contained the complete destruction of 2 relationships. I spread the documents across my parents' coffee table with surgical precision, each page a scalpel cutting through their carefully constructed lies. Let's start with the most damning evidence, I said, pulling out the bank's authentication log. October 15th, 2:45 p.m. Both of you entered Riverton Mutual together. The security footage timestamp matches the safe deposit box access record. Grant's hand moved to his collar, loosening his tie. That doesn't mean... Here's the signature card. I placed it front and center. Both your signatures, witnessed by Patricia Delford, branch manager, Grant Holloway, primary, Tessa Vale, authorized secondary, not Mrs. Holloway as secondary, which would be normal for a married couple's emergency documents. My sister's name, specifically added. My father picked up the paper, studying it with the intensity he'd once reserved for fraudulent insurance claims. This requires both parties present. You can't add someone to a safe deposit box remotely. Exactly, I said. They planned this together, in person, during Grant's supposed client lunch. Tessa's carefully constructed vulnerability was cracking. You're misinterpreting. Am I misinterpreting this? I held up the Maplewood Suites lease. Page 3, financial reference. Grant Holloway provided proof of income for your apartment. The same apartment paid for with $4,800 cash that matches exactly 1 month's worth of unexplained ATM withdrawals from our joint account. My mother had gone very still, the way she did before unleashing decades of accumulated disappointment. Tessa. What medical emergency? What? Tessa blinked, caught off guard. You told me last month you might need to borrow money for a medical situation. Was that a lie to cover this? I pulled out another document. Her insurance claim summary. 100% coverage for her annual physical dental cleaning and a dermatology consultation. No outstanding medical bills, no payment plans, no emergency procedures. You pulled my insurance records. Tessa's voice pitched higher, indignation replacing guilt. No, you left them in Mom's kitchen drawer last week when you were organizing her papers. I photographed them. I turned to the next page. But this is more interesting. Email from Grant to T. Vale, private at webmail. Not your regular email. Tessa, a private account. Subject line, safe as promised. Body of email, moved everything as discussed. 6 months should be enough time. 6 months for what? My father asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Grant stood abruptly. We don't have to sit here for this interrogation. Come on, Tessa? Sit down. My father's voice carried the authority of every investigation he'd ever conducted. Nobody leaves until we understand why $50,000 of marital assets are sitting in a safe deposit box under both your names. I pulled out the next folder. The text messages are particularly enlightening. Grant to T on November 2nd S, getting suspicious but won't find anything. November 9th. Lawyer says 6 months residency establishes separate finances. November 16th. After holidays, we tell her. Each word landed like a punch. My mother gripped her wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. Tell me what? I asked, though the answer was obvious. That you were leaving me for my sister, that you'd already stolen $50,000 to start your new life, that the apartment wasn't temporary, but a test run. Tessa's mask finally slipped entirely. You don't understand what it's been like. What's been like, sneaking around with my husband, letting me cook you dinner while planning to destroy my marriage, smiling at family gatherings knowing you had our savings in a box with your name on it. I pulled out the parking garage photos, high-resolution images from my dash cam. October 20th, 11:43 p.m. Your car in our visitor spot. October 27th, 12:15 a.m. November 3rd, 11:58 p.m. Always late. Always after I'd taken my sleeping medication for the insomnia that mysteriously started 5 months ago. Grant's face had progressed from pale to green. How did you... Dash cam. Installed it after someone sideswiped me in August. Lucky timing. Wouldn't you say... I spread out the final set of papers. Cash withdrawal patterns. Every single one corresponds with either Tessa's shift endings or her days off. The ATM locations form a triangle between her clinic, our house, and Maplewood Suites. My father stood, walking to the window. His reflection showed a man processing betrayal on multiple levels. Grant, you moved $50,000 without your wife's knowledge. It was temporary protection. Protection from what? I interrupted. From me discovering your affair, from having to split assets fairly in a divorce, from having to explain why my sister has been accessing our marital savings. The room fell silent. The grandfather clock chimed 6 p.m., each note hanging in the air like an accusation. "Here's my favorite piece of evidence," I said, pulling out the final document. "Google location history. Did you know your phone tracks everywhere you go? Grant every Tuesday logistics meeting shows you at Maplewood Suites. Every Saturday extended run has you stationary at Riverside Park's parking lot for 2 hours. Stationary, Grant, not running." Tessa made a sound between a gasp and a sob. "This is invasive." Invasive. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Like sleeping with my husband, like stealing our savings, like sitting at my table eating my food while planning to take my life apart. My mother stood slowly, walking to Tessa. For a moment, I thought she might embrace her. Instead, she spoke with quiet devastation. "Get out of my house." "Mom, both of you, get out." She turned to Grant. "And if that money isn't returned immediately, I'll personally ensure every person at Linden & Co. knows exactly what kind of man they employ." Grant's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went even paler. "The lawyer, Vera Sinclair. She's sent a demand letter to my work email." I smiled for the first time that evening. "Oh, did I mention I retained counsel Friday afternoon? She's very thorough. Specializes in financial fraud and divorce proceedings. You should check your email, too. Tessa." Your clinic administrators CC'd on everything. The beautiful tableau of Sunday dinner had become a crime scene, evidence spread across every surface, the chocolate tart presiding over it all like a bitter joke. They wanted me to apologize for suspecting them. Instead, I'd given them the truth, served cold and thoroughly documented. I stood in the center of my parents' living room, surrounded by evidence and shattered trust, and finally delivered the apology they'd all been waiting for. "You're right, Tessa. I do owe you an apology." My voice carried the crystalline clarity of absolute conviction. "I'm sorry I stayed silent for 5 months while you and my husband built your betrayal on $50,000 of stolen money. I'm sorry I let you both think I was too naive, too trusting, too weak to notice what was happening in my own home." The room held its breath. Grant reached for my arm, but I stepped away, maintaining the distance between us like a fortress wall. "I'm sorry," I continued, turning to face my sister directly, "that I allowed you to use the word family as a weapon, as camouflage for an affair that required you to look me in the eye every Sunday dinner while sleeping with my husband every Tuesday night." Tessa's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came. I reached into my bag one final time, pulling out the civil lawsuit papers Vera Sinclair had prepared. The letterhead of Sinclair and Dune gleamed official and unforgiving. "This is a civil suit for conversion of marital assets, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty." I placed it on the table with deliberate precision. "Grant, as my spouse, you have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of our marital estate. Moving $50,000 to a safe deposit box accessible by your affair partner violates that duty." "Affair partner," Grant's voice cracked. "Sloan, that's not, what would you call it, business associate co-conspirator." I pulled out my phone, tapping play on a voice recording. Grant's voice filled the room, tinny but unmistakable. "Just need to keep it at Tessa's until everything's finalized. 6 months. Then we can make it official." "You recorded me." "Wisconsin is a one-party consent state. I consented." I turned to the next page of the lawsuit. "The demand is simple. Return of the $50,000 plus 8% interest. Immediately. Attorney fees of $3,200. Punitive damages to be determined if this goes to trial." My father picked up the papers, reading with professional interest. "This also includes a restraining order against asset dissipation." "Correct. As of 9 tomorrow, when Vera files this, Grant won't be able to access the safe deposit box, sell any assets, or move any money without court approval." I pulled out another document. I've also filed for legal separation with temporary orders freezing all joint accounts except for documented living expenses. Tessa finally found her voice. This is insane. You're destroying our family over a misunderstanding. No. My mother's voice cut through like a blade. You destroyed this family when you chose to sleep with your sister's husband, when you chose to steal from her, when you chose to sit at my table and lie to my face for months. I pulled out my last piece of paper. There's an alternative to the lawsuit, a settlement agreement. Sign it tonight, and this stays private. Refuse. And tomorrow Vera files everything publicly. Linden & Co. will receive copies. The clinic will receive copies. Every mutual friend we have will know exactly what you both did. Grant snatched the settlement agreement, scanning rapidly. This gives you 70% of all assets. Generous, considering Wisconsin law allows judges to award even more in cases of financial misconduct. I watched him read, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally, defeat. You'll also note the liquidation clause, the BMW, the investment portfolio, your precious Rolex collection. Everything gets sold to repay what you stole. And if we don't sign? Tessa asked, though her voice had lost all its earlier defiance. Then we go to court, where I'll present every piece of evidence, including this rather interesting item. I held up a credit card statement. $4,000 at Bergman Jewelers, 3 weeks ago. The same day Tessa posted that photo wearing a new tennis bracelet. Early Christmas gift from myself. You captioned it. Except you don't have $4,000 in discretionary income, do you? Tessa. My sister's hand moved involuntarily to her wrist, where the bracelet gleamed under the lamplight. That's marital assets used to purchase gifts for an affair partner, I continued. In court, it's called dissipation. Judges really dislike dissipation. Grant set down the papers, his hands shaking. You want everything. No, I want what's mine. The $50,000, the equity in our house, the retirement accounts you were planning to drain, the life I built while you were building a future with my sister. I gathered the evidence back into neat folders. You have until 10 p.m. to decide. Sign the settlement, transfer the money from that safe deposit box back to an escrow account, and this ends quietly. Or don't. And tomorrow everyone knows. 2 hours. Grant's voice pitched high with panic. You gave me 4 days to apologize or face divorce. I'm giving you 2 hours to return what you stole or face public humiliation and financial ruin. I think that's more than fair. Tessa stood abruptly, tears finally breaking through her composure. How did we get here? We're sisters. We're sisters. You ended that relationship the first time you kissed my husband. You buried it the day you put your name on our money. Tonight is just the funeral. I picked up my bag. The weight of evidence replaced by the lightness of truth finally spoken. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for ruining Sunday dinner, but I'm not sorry for protecting myself from people who would smile while stealing from me. My father stood, walked over, and did something he hadn't done in years. Pulled me into a fierce hug. Don't apologize for standing up for yourself. Not ever. Over his shoulder, I watched Grant and Tessa exchange panicked glances, the perpetrators suddenly realizing they'd become victims of their own greed. 10 p.m., I reminded them, pulling back from my father's embrace. Vera will be waiting for your response. I walked to the door, then turned for one final statement. Oh, and Tessa, that spare key you have to my house. Don't bother returning it. I changed the locks yesterday. The last thing I saw before leaving was Grant reaching for the settlement agreement with shaking hands while Tessa stood frozen, her hand still covering the tennis bracelet bought with my money, worn to my parents' house, flaunted at what was supposed to be my humiliation. They'd wanted me to apologize. I'd given them exactly what they deserved. The truth, publicly displayed, with a price tag of $50,000 plus interest. The call from Vera Sinclair came at 9:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the deadline. I was sitting in my home office. Murphy curled at my feet, Laptop open to the business license application for Northline Studio. They caved, Vera said without preamble. Grant's attorney just sent the signed settlement agreement. They'll transfer the full $50,000 plus interest to my escrow account by noon tomorrow. I closed my eyes, feeling something between relief and rage. His attorney. He got a lawyer that fast. Emergency consultation. Probably cost him $2,000 just for the Sunday night call. Vera's satisfaction carried through the phone. Grant also agreed to accelerate the asset division. He'll buy out your share of the house with his 401k funds, and you keep all liquid accounts after the $50,000 is returned. What about Tessa? Signed a promissory note accepting liability for half if Grant defaults. Her signature was notarized by their attorney. She's legally on the hook for $25,000 if he doesn't pay. I pulled up my spreadsheet, the one tracking every dollar they'd taken, every lie they'd told. Time to close it out and open a new one, for my future. The business accounts, I asked. All yours. The BMW is his, but you get the equivalent value in cash from the investment portfolio, should total approximately $49,000 after liquidation. $49,000, plus the returned $50,000 with interest. Nearly $100,000 to start over. Money that would have disappeared into their safe deposit box, their secret apartment, their planned life together. And the restraining provisions. Mutual no contact except through attorneys. Tessa can't come within 500 feet of your residence or workplace. Grant has 72 hours to remove his belongings with police escort. Murphy lifted his head. Sensing my shift in energy, I scratched behind his ears, grounding myself in something pure and loyal. There's one more thing, Vera continued. Grant's attorney included a rather pathetic plea. He wants to keep the Rolex his father gave him. Sentimental value. No. The word came out sharp and final. He can buy it back at market value from the estate sale. Sentiment is a luxury he can't afford anymore. Monday morning arrived crisp and bright. At 11:58 a.m., my phone buzzed with the confirmation $54,000 transferred to escrow, $50,000 principal plus $4,000 in interest, 8% annually, calculated from the date they'd stolen it. I drove to First National Bank, where Noah had prepared the paperwork for my new business account. Northline Studio, LLC, design services specializing in branding for small businesses. My first 3 clients were already lined up. The bakery next to Grindhouse Cafe, a yoga studio downtown, and ironically, a divorce attorney Vera had referred. Big deposit, Noah asked, reviewing the transfer authorization. $54,000, settlement from my divorce. He didn't ask further questions, just processed the forms with professional efficiency. The money that Grant and Tessa had hidden away for their future became the foundation of mine. Tuesday afternoon. Grant arrived with 2 officers and a moving truck. I watched from the kitchen window as he loaded boxes, his shoulders slumped, face drawn. The BMW sat in the driveway, already tagged with the estate sale sticker. He'd have to buy a used Honda, maybe something like Tessa's. How poetic. He looked up once, catching my eye through the glass. His mouth moved. Sorry, perhaps, or please. I closed the blinds. The divorce paperwork specified asset division down to the penny. Grant's 401k early withdrawal penalty alone cost him $11,000. The BMW sale brought in $32,000, transferred directly to my account. The Rolex collection, those precious watches he'd spent years acquiring, sold at auction for $18,000 total. Every dollar flowed back to me, the woman they'd tried to leave with nothing. Thursday. I met with my first client at the bakery. Sarah, the owner, wanted a complete rebrand, logo, packaging, social media templates. My quote, $8,000. She didn't blink. Vera Sinclair recommended you highly, Sarah said. Said you have an eye for detail that catches what others miss. Indeed, I did. I'd caught every detail of my husband's deception, transformed it into evidence, then transformed that evidence into capital. The industrial printer arrived Friday afternoon, a Canon Image Prograph Pro 4100 perfect for high-quality design prints. Invoice $49,870. I paid in cash, counted out bill by bill, each one a small victory over the people who'd thought me weak. The printer would pay for itself within 6 months. My client list was growing. Word of mouth from Vera's network proved golden. Divorced women rebuilding their lives needed branding for their new ventures. Law firms needed compelling visual presentations. Even Patricia from Riverton Mutual called, asking if I designed annual reports. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received an email from my mother. Tessa had moved back home temporarily, unable to afford the Maplewood suites without Grant's cash infusions. Grant had relocated to a studio apartment near his office, his salary garnished for the settlement payments. They'd imploded exactly as they deserved, publicly, expensively, completely. But I wasn't looking backward anymore. My office wall displayed the Northline Studio business license, professionally framed. Below it, a photo from my first client presentation, me standing confidently beside my work, wearing the kind of smile that comes from turning betrayal into opportunity. The $50,000 they'd stolen had multiplied. The lies they'd told became leverage for truth in court. The secret apartment they'd shared became evidence of asset dissipation. Every cruel calculation they'd made against me had reversed, like a tide turning to flood the very people who'd thought themselves safe on higher ground. My phone buzzed with another client inquiry. A restaurant group needing comprehensive rebranding. Budget $70,000. I thought about Grant and Tessa, probably meeting in secret to commiserate about their losses, about how unfair I'd been, about how they were the real victims. Let them. While they mourned their failed conspiracy, I was building an empire on its ashes. The printer hummed to life, producing the first proof of Sarah's bakery logo. Crisp lines, perfect colors, professional quality that justified professional prices. Each page that emerged represented independence earned through evidence, courage converted to cash, betrayal transformed into business. $50,000 they'd hidden, $54,000 I'd recovered, $49,000 from forced asset sales, and now, infinite potential ahead, funded by their failure. The Sunday dinner that was meant to break me became the moment I reclaimed everything. As I stood on my parents' porch that November evening, the cold Midwest wind cutting through my coat, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Freedom. Not the kind that comes from walking away, but the kind you seize with both hands and documentation to prove it. Behind me, through the window, I could see Grant and Tessa still seated in the living room, heads bent over the settlement agreement like students who'd failed an exam they'd thought they'd aced. My father stood watching them, arms crossed, the disappointment on his face worth more than any apology they could have offered. My mother had retreated to the kitchen, but I could hear dishes being moved with the particular violence of maternal rage. The clock on my phone showed 9:51 p.m., 9 minutes left on their deadline. They'd sign. They had to. The alternative, public humiliation, career destruction, family disgrace, was unthinkable for people who'd built their affair on the assumption they'd never be caught. I walked to my car, each step measured and deliberate. Murphy would be waiting at home, probably confused by the empty space where Grant's presence used to be. But dogs adjust. They're resilient, like their owners can learn to be. My phone vibrated. A text from Vera. Agreement signed and notarized. Funds guaranteed by morning. Congratulations. I sat in my car for a moment, engine running, heat beginning to chase away the November chill. Through the rearview mirror, I watched Grant's silhouette move past the window. He was pacing, probably calculating how much his betrayal would cost in actual dollars. $54,000 returned, $18,000 in watches, $32,000 from the BMW. His entire 401k liquidated. The price of deception had compound interest. But what they'd never understand was that the money was just the beginning. They'd given me something worth far more, the knowledge that I could stand alone, fight back, and win. They'd tried to gaslight me into submission, to make me doubt my own instincts. to convince me that my suspicions were symptoms of jealousy rather than responses to genuine betrayal. Instead, they'd taught me to trust myself completely. The drive home took 12 minutes through empty Sunday evening streets. I passed Maplewood Suites, where Tessa's 3-month deposit was now forfeit. The apartment she'd thought would be her fresh start now just another piece of evidence in my files. I passed Riverton Mutual, where tomorrow Patricia would process the emptying of safe deposit box 447, returning the money to its rightful owner. Me, at home. I stood in my office, looking at the space I'd transformed in the past 3 weeks. Where Grant's sports memorabilia once cluttered the shelves, client portfolios now stood in neat rows. Where his beer sign had hung, my business license gleamed. The industrial printer occupied the corner where he'd kept his putting practice mat, a $50,000 machine that would generate 5 times that in the coming year. Murphy padded in, tail wagging, unaware that his world had fundamentally shifted. I knelt down, burying my face in his golden fur, allowing myself one moment of grief. Not for Grant. He'd killed that love with every secret text, every lie, every dollar stolen. But for the sister I'd thought I had, the family dinners that would never be the same, the trust that could never be rebuilt. The moment passed. Grief was a luxury I'd process later. Maybe. For now, there was work to do, clients to onboard, invoices to send, a business to build on the ashes of my marriage. At exactly 10 p.m., my phone rang. Grant. I let it go to voicemail. Then Tessa. Also ignored. At 10:15, a text from my mother. Proud of you. Sunday dinners continue. You're always welcome. They're not. I made tea, opened my laptop, and began designing a logo for Sarah's Bakery. The creative work flowed differently now, cleaner, sharper, more confident. Every line I drew was my own. Every color choice belonged to me alone. No one could claim credit for my talent or steal the proceeds from my work. By midnight, I'd completed 3 design concepts, each one better than anything I'd produced while living under the shadow of their deception. The printer hummed to life, producing samples that would win the contract and lead to 5 referrals within a month. The house felt different without Grant's presence, but not empty. Fuller, somehow, like I'd been living in only half the space, compressed by lies, and could finally stretch into all the corners. I moved through each room, not reclaiming them but claiming them for the first time. The bedroom where I'd slept beside a stranger, the kitchen where I'd cooked meals for a woman who was stealing more than recipes, the living room where we'd performed the charade of happy marriage while they performed their own drama in a furnished apartment across town. Tomorrow, the money would hit my account. Tomorrow, I'd file the business tax paperwork. Tomorrow, I'd meet with 2 new clients and quote prices that reflected my worth, not my desperation. Tomorrow would be the first day of a life built on truth instead of performance, evidence instead of assumption, strength instead of silence. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of explosion, I stood at my office window and watched snow beginning to fall. The first snow of winter, covering the dead grass and bare trees with pristine white. A blank slate, a fresh start, a world made new by simply telling the truth and demanding what was mine. The last document on my desk was the divorce decree, waiting for the judge's signature. Dissolution of marriage due to financial malfeasance and adultery. Simple, clean, factual, no melodrama, no extended battles, just the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I picked up my pen and signed the final settlement acknowledgement. Sloane Carter. Just my name. No longer Mrs. Holloway. No longer anyone's wife or victim. Just me. With $54,000 in recovered assets, $49,000 in forced liquidation, and unlimited potential ahead. The grandfather clock I'd inherited from my grandmother chimed midnight. A new day. My phone buzzed with an email from my first corporate client, confirming a contract worth $25,000. By morning, I'd have 3 more inquiries. By spring, Northline Studio would have enough revenue to lease a proper office space. By next November, I'd be looking back on this night not as an ending, but as the moment everything truly began. I closed my laptop, turned off the office lights, and headed to bed. Alone, but not lonely. Betrayed, but not broken. $50,000 poorer in trust, but infinitely richer in truth. I'm not sorry for speaking the truth, I said to the empty room, to the falling snow, to the universe that had finally balanced its books. I'm only sorry I stayed silent for so long. The door clicked shut. The lock turned. And somewhere across town, two liars were learning that some apologies come too late, some money can't be stolen without consequence, and some women refuse to quietly disappear. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on how you would have handled this situation. Your support means everything.